Terror greets Federal University in Taraba State as militants invade, kill lecturer, 2 students. Delta State government embargoes children adoption to curb child trafficking. In international news, fireworks at the U.S. Democratic debate in Detroit as Senators Warren, Sanders grilled by moderate challengers. And in sport, caster Semenya blocked from participating in World Championships.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Terror was unleashed on the Federal University in Wukari, Taraba State on Tuesday afternoon when a lecturer and 2 students were killed by suspected Juku militias who invaded the institution. The school has been shut down and all academic activities suspended. A protest by TIFF students and staff followed the killings, and the registrar of the institution had released a circular that required all students to leave the premises by midday today. The Islamic movement in Nigeria, also known as Shiite and led by Sheikh Ibrahim El-Zakzaky, has been described as a fake movement by Al-Thagalayn Cultural Foundation. The group says Islamic movement in Nigeria is not synonymous with Shiism, and neither of the two is interchangeable. Secretary General of the factional Shiite group, Sheikh Hamza Mohammed Lawal, has warned Iran and Saudi Arabia to stop using the IMN crisis to use Nigeria as a testing ground for their struggle for regional supremacy. He was speaking at a news conference in Kaduna on Tuesday. Lawal said IMN was an offshoot of the Muslim Student Society that started in the late 1970s around the inception of the Islamic Revolution in Iran. He said it was a social, cultural, and political religious revivalist movement. Lawal said there is a difference between Islamic movement in Nigeria and Shiism. He urged the press to note that difference and call IMN by the name it has given itself. The Delta Ministry of Women Affairs is said to have secretly embargoed children adoption in the state in curbing child trafficking. The Delta State chapter of the Committee for the Defense of Human Rights has commended Governor Ifeanyi Okowa for placing the embargo. CDHR Unit Coordinator on Child Rights, Comrade Agbogo, said the embargo is proof that government officials will further curb child trafficking. He lamented that the order was shrouded in secrecy, but commended the embargo as a way forward by the government to curb the excesses of government officials and trafficking children in the state. The committee said Delta State Ministry of Women Affairs should not be in the business of children adoption in the state. It called on the government to bring to book all officials of the ministry who had benefited from adoption, racketeering in the state between 2008 and 2019, including proprietors of NGOs, orphanages, and individuals. The issue of state police in Nigeria has received a boost with a declaration of support by Vice President Yemi Osinbajo while delivering a speech at the 70th anniversary lecture of the Lagos Country Club on Tuesday. Osinbajo said the establishment of the security arm was necessary because Nigeria was a large and diverse federation, end quote. His support for state police was in tune with the theme of the occasion, promoting national cohesion and for progress and prosperity. The vice president said the country must do all that is necessary as a diverse society to strengthen the institutions of law enforcement, security, and the rule of law. He said the approach must be dynamic because the challenge is dynamic. The vice president also says state police in this diverse federation is imperative. Solid waste management is the most pressing environmental challenge faced by Nigeria's urban and rural areas. With a population of close to 200 million, Nigeria generates more than 32 million tons of solid waste annually. Only a third of that is collected. The reckless disposal of the rest contributes to blockage of drainage networks and chokes water bodies. In their own little way, some Nigerians are now profiting from recycling solid waste. As Deji Badmus reports, the irregular folks you never would have thought could do this.
It has the look of a massive dump site, but far from it. It's more or less an organized junkyard. From plastic waste to whatever used household items you could think of, you would find them here. And serious buying and selling take place here as well. For many, this is a serious business. Virtually all the waste items here are recycled right at the yard and then resold. No one typifies what goes on here than Bashir, who buys aluminium waste and recycles them into cookware and local stoves and then resells them. The father of one has been doing this for the past 20 years and has been his major source of livelihood.
Alhamdulillah, mun gode wa Allah.
Out of what I make here, I also feed others. I have trained many people, both old and young, ever since I came from Kaduna to Jabi in Abuja. This work has really helped me. So far, I have been able to marry and have a child. We don't lack for anything. I have peace of mind and I take care of my household. We thank God.
Also earning from this is Mustafa Umar. He's currently a student, and this is where the funding for his education comes from. He says he's been into the recycling business since 2010 and has no plans of stopping anytime soon.
I
was in high school when I started this job. From the money I made here, I was able to pay my fees through secondary school and higher education. When I finished with my education, I came back here to continue the business. I've been unable to provide for my parents and siblings and the least privileged. I've even trained others in the business and they're also working on training others as well.
In a country where unemployment is put at around 23%, jobs like these have become lifesavers, engaging hundreds both directly and indirectly. Isa Adamu comes here almost every day to buy cookware from the recyclers, which he then sells at various local markets in town.
I started this business since from my primary level, so now I have a national diploma for this business where I do. Now I have certificate for national diploma, so I'm not to say anything, even I thank God for this business.
Almost everyone who works here has a unique story to tell. But most importantly is that this has become a vital source of livelihood for them. And of course for them, what they are doing is beyond just recycling. They are converting waste to wealth and raising families from their enterprise.
Coming up, African stories. Sudan suspends schools after student killings. And later, international news. U.S. senators Warren and Sanders grilled by moderate challengers at Democratic debate.
You are watching ANN.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to African stories. The second Ebola patient in eastern DR Congo city of Goma has died. Now, this has increased concerns the virus could establish a foothold in a densely populated area of 2 million persons close to the Rwandan border. Goma's first Ebola case was detected in mid-July, prompting the World Health Organization to warn the spread of the disease could accelerate. Head of DR Congo's Ebola response team, Jean-Jacques Muyembe, was quoted as saying in an official statement that the patients who just died started developing symptoms 10 days ago after arriving from a mining area outside the city. Muyembe says response teams are continuing work to decontaminate the home of the deceased. Health officials believe the patient was not connected to the first case in Goma. The epidemic has killed more than 1,700 persons since it was declared almost a year ago. It has become the second worst outbreak on record. The World Health Organization has declared the disease a global health emergency. Mass demonstrations over the killings of 4 school children at a rally in the Sudan on Monday has led to the indefinite suspension of activities and lessons in all Sudanese schools. State news agency reports that the ruling military authorities have ordered schools nationwide to close from Wednesday. 5 persons have died in North Kordofan State, 4 of them school students. Dozens more were injured after snipers and other gunmen opened fire on the protests in El Obeid over fuel and bread shortages. In response, protesting students gathered in cities outside, including the capital Khartoum, in demonstration following the killings and to continue pressing their demands. Head of Sudan's ruling military council said on Tuesday there must be an immediate accountability. Campaigners, the Forces of Freedom and Change coalition of opposition groups, accused the military and paramilitary forces of opening fire on high school pupils and have called for more protests. Opposition-linked doctors say so far more than 100 persons have been killed during demonstrations. Inflation in Zimbabwe has now hit 176%, 1% higher than last week. Government workers are now crying that they are being squeezed into oblivion. Many say they cannot even afford to pay for basic medical care, not even for themselves, but for their children. Faraya Uwakutuya reports from Harare.
The unrelenting price hikes have seen more Blessing Nyambara's standard of living decline rapidly and forced drastic changes.
I have cut down my meals to 1 per day. I can only eat when I'm back from work. I just go in the morning. I spend the whole day at work, and then when I'm home, that's when we can organize a meal so that we can eat, all of us, when we are home. We can no longer afford a situation whereby anyone can eat anything anytime he or she feels like at home. But as a family, we have to wait for each other, and then we eat together so that we won't waste any food anymore.
The high school mathematics teacher takes home 321 Zimbabwe dollars after deductions, well below the $1,200 basic consumer food basket, and not enough to attend to urgent obligations.
With that 321, it's totally difficult. I couldn't place anything because now I have my mother who is sick. I can't take her to the hospital. I only bought painkillers, but I have to take her to the hospital. She has to be diagnosed. Maybe she has cancer or something, but because we can't, it will grow and we'll lose it. So I think if my government do something now, and it has to be now.
President Mnangagwa has acknowledged the current hardships and says the painful austerity measures will begin to ease by the end of this year. In the interim, his government has offered civil servants allowances and an increment to cushion them. However, the workers say what's currently on the table won't take them very far. Unions representing them want October 2018 salaries reinstated.
I think they have to give us the money equivalent to our $500 they used to give us. And with that, we can survive. If they use the interbank rate, we are okay.
More Blessing is one of the more fortunate ones, able to supplement her income with poultry and gardening projects. But with the economic crunch affecting everyone, her client base is shrinking, and that will make it harder for her to stay afloat.
A lawyer for a blogger who drew international attention after being accused of blasphemy said on Tuesday his client has been set free in Mauritania. Attorney Fatimata Mbaye told French news agency although his client has been released, he is not completely free in his movement. Mekatia was initially sentenced to death, then was given a jail term, and afterwards was held under house arrest. Citizen journalist and blogger Mekatia was arrested in 2013 and sentenced to death for what the state called blasphemy, after he wrote a blog post condemning the use of religion to justify racial discrimination. In 2017, a Mauritanian court commuted Mekatia's sentence to 2 years, which he had already served, legally liberating him, but he remained detained in an undisclosed location. When we return, international news. U.S. senators grilled by moderate challengers at Democratic debate. And later, sport. Caster Semenya blocked from participating in World Championships.
You are watching ANN.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to news from around the world. United States Democratic presidential candidate came out swinging in a debate on Tuesday, hoping to make a breakthrough in the first night of the second Democratic debate. The spirited first night of the second Democratic primary debate featured no shortage of confrontation, with more moderate candidates taking aim at the leading progressives on stage over the feasibility of their proposals with varying degrees of success. 10 candidates debated over everything from climate change to healthcare to preparations for slavery. The audience at Detroit Fox Theatre brought with applause for Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, two of the top contenders for the nomination. Meanwhile, bottom-tier candidates like John Delaney, Tim Ryan, and John were also present. The Democratic National Committee announced in December the schedule for 12 official DNC-sanctioned debates that began last month. 6 more debates will hold this year and 6 during the first 4 months of next year. Britain's new Prime Minister Boris Johnson is visiting Northern Ireland, which is widely known as Brexit's toughest riddle. Johnson is aiming to sell his plan to pull Britain out of the European Union with or without a deal. Northern Ireland is the only part of Britain to share a land border with the rest of the EU. Plans for the border have become the most contentious issue in Britain's negotiations with the EU over the terms of its exit. The bloc insists on a backstop, an insurance policy to prevent border controls by requiring Britain to obey some EU rules in case both sides fail to agree on a later trade deal. Johnson rejects that demand as undemocratic and says Britain will leave the EU with no deal at all unless the EU drops it. It says technology can ensure a friction-free border even if Britain adopts separate customs and regulatory rules. Northern Ireland voted to stay in the European Union in 2006 when the rest of Britain voted to leave. And South Korea's military says North Korea has fired 2 short-range ballistic missiles off its east coast early on Wednesday. Last week's launch was the first such action since U.S. President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un met in June. The North called that launch a solemn warning to Seoul over its planned military exercises with Washington. The missiles flew 250 kilometers and reached a height of 30 kilometers before landing in the Sea of Japan, also known as the East Sea, according to South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff. South Korea's Defense Minister Jong Kwon-do said the missiles were a different type from previous models. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe confirmed that there was no impact on Japan's security following the launch. A first meeting of Chinese and American negotiators in 2 months wrapped up in Shanghai. China has agreed to buy more agricultural goods from the United States after what they said were frank, efficient, and constructive trade talks on Wednesday. It was the first between top negotiators from the 2 countries since discussions were suspended in May. A statement released after the talks said the Chinese side did not specify what products it would purchase but would consider its internal demand. The statement also said the U.S. would create favorable conditions for the import. The next round of talks will take place in September in the U.S., while the talks among U.S. trade representatives Robert Lighthizer, U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, and Chinese Vice Premier Liu were closely watched. They were seen as largely symbolic by Chinese diplomatic observers and advisors. Still ahead, sports. Caster Semenya blocked from participating in World Championships. Find out why.
You are watching ANN.
Dear Mommy, you went out that night with the baby in your tummy, but you did not come back. The baby is very fine and she eats and sleeps a lot. Everyone says that you are in a better place, but I miss you so much. I keep asking them, where is the better place? But nobody answers me. Auntie Kemi just hugs me and says, go and play. Mommy, I miss you. Please, when are you coming home?
I still do miss you, Mom. And in honor of your memory, I'm a doctor today working with the MTN Foundation to save mothers and children every day.
Ending mother and child mortality in Nigeria is dear to us. We will keep strengthening this most important bond just for you.
Welcome back. This is ANN News and Sport. Super Falcons captain Desire Okparanozie is demanding equal pay for Nigeria's women's team as their male counterparts. The Super Falcons are the continent's most successful national side with 9 titles and remain the only African team to have played at all 8 Women's World Cup finals. Okparanozie explains her side can expect $3,000 for a win and $1,500 for a draw at major tournaments, while the men's team will receive $10,000 and $5,000 respectively. She said this big gap tells a different story, and a proper rethink of this mode of payment could also help the women's game. Runner Caster Semenya will not be able to compete internationally without taking testosterone-reducing medication. The new decision will prevent the South African athlete from defending her 800 meters title at the World Championships in Doha, Qatar in September. According to a policy recently devised by the International Association of Athletics Federation, all athletes with a difference in sex development should reduce their blood testosterone to a specific level for at least 6 months and then maintain that for the rest of their athletic career. In order to compete in events from 400 meters to a mile, a Swiss court had temporarily suspended the controversial new policy in June. If the suspension had continued, Semenya would have been able or allowed to compete in Doha, while her appeal to have the new rules reversed is ongoing. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a pleasant evening.